Hey y'all, my name is Allison Hulse and I'm here to present my final project. I'm going to start off with a few video collages that I made that's going to represent my artist statement. So, here you go.
Look at this. Look at this. You like a dolly? Shall we go for the dolly? There's a good girl. You're a good little girl, aren't you, Sophie? Look, what does this say? Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ooh, look at this, Sophie. Meow, meow. I think she liked that pink dolly the best.
If I were to tell you actually that Sophie is Edward,
Does
that change anything?
I maybe thought, oh, this is a little girl, so I have to give her little girl things.
Hello. 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 Come.
What's this one? What's that one do? Is that a robot? What about this? You like that one? What does this one do? Oliver.
You've gone for, you could say, boy toys for this boy.
Possibly in my subconscious, but for me, I was just going for what was around me, but in fact my subconscious was automatically playing a trick on me that I was...
If I tell you that he is actually a girl.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I suppose it's because of the stereotype.
And then that changed your behaviour towards
it
the
did.
child.
It did.
And your behaviour was
lie,
quite
it
directive.
Did. 1, 2, 3. Beep, 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 beep. Do you want to see my robot?
She's picked up the robot, the car, the puzzle game. I think she's been much more physical in handling the child than the other adults have been with girls.
That really astounded me because I thought that I was somebody that had a really open mind.
Surprise. So I automatically went for the pink fluffy toy because I said it was a girl, so I was sort of stereotyping.
I've always thought I was rather more open-minded than that, and I would think, these are children's toys, whatever the gender.
It will make me think the next time I'm with a child, so my niece or my nephew, to make sure that I am actually being sort of fair and equal with all of them, and just giving each child an opportunity to just be whoever they are.
I had dude friends that were like, "Oh, you're having a boy? Like, I'll teach him how to throw a ball." It's just like, dude, I can throw a ball. Like, what are you talking about?
Where do you start with that?
God, my path is like a genderqueer person.
My understanding about gender is that ultimately it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't give you the information about that person that you think that it's going to give you.
The person I am today was like very much in line with the person that I was or longed to be when I was really little. I was a tomboy. My best friends were primarily boys. I played with boy stuff. That changed as I became a teenager and wanted to fit in more and just wasn't comfortable being myself. And I was still kind of figuring out who I was, and that took a long time. From that time until my early 30s, my queerness in terms of my gender sort of continued to transform.
I was at the very beginning of deciding to try to have a baby by myself.
So I've always known that I wanted to have kids someday. I thought I probably would end up trying to go down the path of having a baby alone also. I just didn't know if the right person was out there to take that journey with. When we got ready to go on our first date, my best friends at the time, they asked me to not talk about wanting to have kids with Michelle. I had brought it up, I think, on some other casual dates a little too soon. Because it was something that was important to me. But with Michelle, they said I should really slow my roll a little bit. And then not knowing that she was actually
trying to have a baby.
People ask you, do you want a boy or a girl? For whatever that means, because this person could be anybody.
You hear that right away. You hear like boys are like this and girls are like that.
But as soon as we found out that we were having a boy, something just sort of clicked. We have this amazing person, and whoever that person is, they're perfect.
But you like all of these like stereotypically boy things. I would say things like, oh God, like what if he wants to play sports? And you'd be like, that's great, I'll be the coach. It's really funny because he's super into sports. Like maybe he was like an Olympic athlete in his past life. He just came with all of these sporting talents that are like visible at 17 months. That's what Dashiell liked growing up. She just like easily relates to him on that level. I'm constantly trying to like queer my relationship with him and get him to wear tutus. He hates it. Like he's just like, no. When I catch myself trying to do these things, it ends up really just making me feel really retro and dumb about gender. It just takes me away from the reality of like him, like Atticus, like who is he, what does he want, and the sort of purity of the things that he's interested in or delighted by. Obviously I want to support whatever he wants to be. This group is the Roly Polies group. It's like this really big moms group. I certainly have like a moment of hesitation around hearing moms group. Are there dads there? Are there other people like me? I'm definitely aware of being his Baba. Dashiell goes by Baba, and that's something that a lot more masculine female people and even some trans men who are parents are going by Baba as an alternative to mom or dad. They've all been awesome. I really like the moms that are in our group very much. I haven't felt weird for not being a traditional mom. It's really nice to have that support group for sure. He is taking in kind of kid media, and he has this great book that's like just pictures and words, but when you open it up, it's like a picture of a girl and a picture of a boy, and it's like girl, boy. I'm just like, child. This is where he starts learning like what things are, and so I hate the idea that he's getting imprinted on him that people who look like this are boys and people who look like that are girls. Even something that's like progressive like Sesame Street. All the monsters are boys unless they have like a bow in their hair and a sparkly necklace on. Like why is Old MacDonald like a guy? Why couldn't it be the lesbian farmer? It's everywhere. I mean, it is. It's everywhere. I think those are things that we are probably more aware of than most people anyway, but with him, we're probably really sensitive to it. Sometimes the best thing to do feels like to be constantly challenging, and then sometimes it's almost just to ignore gender completely. He's being raised by a gender non-conforming person, so just the existence of Dashiell is going to be a huge piece of information about the reality of what gender is or isn't. It's easy to take for granted sometimes the environments that we're in because they are special, but they're still small. All of these questions and concerns that we have about gender, I know tons of straight couples who have these exact same questions and concerns. Everybody needs to be reconsidering the way that they're presenting gender to their kids. It's not even whether or not Atticus is personally going to be a genderqueer or gender fluid person. Atticus could grow up and be a completely traditionally cisgendered male, and he needs to understand the variety of genders that are out there so he can be a respectful human being in the world.
Alright, so after watching those couple videos, I have some questions that I'd like to ask you. First one being, do you personally know anyone who's pursuing gender-neutral parenting? Question number 2. Is this a parenting style that you could see yourself doing in the future? Why or why not? Question number 3. What are some positive and negative effects on children who are parented using this method? Alright y'all, I'm now going to read my artist statement for you. It's entitled Pink versus Blue. Perhaps you may have heard of Baby X, a fictional children's story which first appeared in Ms. Magazine in 1975. It tells the story of a baby who is raised not as a girl or as a boy, but as X. The parents raise the baby telling no one whether X is a boy or a girl. Many adventures arise for X, most being very challenging. Society could not understand why X's parents would want to do this. X's parents would be questioned constantly. Children at school would ask X questions trying to figure out if he was a boy or a girl. It was killing everyone. In the end, X had the world figured out. X was able to communicate with and understand boys and girls on personal levels. X did not have any kind of identity problem. X knew perfectly well what it was. The story was a reflection on how society shapes boys and girls beginning at birth. After reading the story and seeing more and more media presence about gender-neutral child raising, it got me interested. Do we treat children differently depending on their sex? I wanted to know why people are raising their children gender neutral and the real effects this has on children, whether it is good or bad. First, I would like to discuss sex and gender, terms I have recently come to know the difference between. Sex is used to describe the biological status of a person. It's determined by one's autonomy, which includes genitals, chromosomes, and reproductive organs. Gender, on the other hand, refers to the socially constructed ideas and expectations that a culture has about a certain sex. This includes societal expectations about specific roles and behaviors associated with each sex. This leads to the understanding that a person could be a certain sex but not identify as the appropriate gender society has for them. There was a study done a few years ago on the effect of gender labels on adult responses to infants. In this study, they took 42 men and women who were mostly students without children. They didn't want previous parenting to influence the results. The students were placed one by one in a room with a baby who was dressed in a yellow jumper, along with 3 toys. Among the toys was a doll, a little football, and a rubber ring. On initial observation, 1/3 of the people said it was a girl, 1/3 said a boy, and 1/3 didn't know. People who assumed it was a girl gave the child the doll. People who assumed it was a boy gave the child the ring, presuming the football may not have been the best toy for an infant. But the best results came from the people who didn't know. They seemed to have just applied their gender to the baby. The females went for the doll while the males went for the ring. The fact that women pick the doll and the men pick the ring almost every time is interesting. It seems people are trying to impose their own gender norms on the baby. This study makes it clear that we put gendered assumption on children even in the infant stage. Before children are even born, we decide their gender. Once the sex is determined from the ultrasound, we immediately put a label on it, define its gender. If the baby is female, we start preparing for a girl to enter the world, decorating her room with girl stereotypes, such as butterflies, baby dolls. We start buying dresses, skirts, and lots of pink clothing for her. This has become the norm in our society. We keep up the trend without realizing it. It doesn't allow our children to be individual and to grow into their own person. Gender-neutral parenting is about exposing children to a variety of gender types and breaking away from traditional gender binary. Gender-neutral parenting comes in different levels, although the meaning behind it is the same. Parents who decide to take a relaxed approach encourage their children to play with boy and girl toys, keep room color and decor neutral, and allow their children to dress themselves. Others take a more serious approach and refer to their child as genderless, which will give the child the opportunity to define their own gender when they are ready. People who take this approach will let very few people in on the child's sex, mainly just the parents will know. Parents who choose this lifestyle are giving their children the opportunity to grow up in a world where they can do anything without worrying about sociological, biological sex boundaries. Once the children get older, it becomes harder for the parent using gender-neutral techniques. The children start attending school and doing activities outside of the house. Society doesn't know much about this and hasn't accepted it as a positive action yet. People get nervous with the unfamiliar. So how does this affect the child? Many people argue socially it's dangerous for a child. It puts a child at risk of not being able to define its identity or not being able to connect with other children because he or she is different. Children at a young age are aware of gender norms. So when a child that is perceived as male, for example, is acting a certain way or wearing something that usually represents a girl, attention is going to be called upon him. Parents worry whether their son or daughter will be teased or harassed just for being different and not giving in to social norms. Children that undergo this style of parenting usually end up with a better grasp of who they are as a person. Why? Because they've had to figure it out. It wasn't handed to them at birth. They've grown into the person they are today. They also have a better understanding of the world because they are more open-minded and they can approach things better. A lot of people relate this form of parenting to the LGBT community, but in reality, this form of parenting is being used by all kinds of people all over the world. Studies actually show that most children who are brought up using this kind of parenting actually end up being heterosexual. Gender neutral parenting was something I could never really get behind, mostly because I was uneducated in what gender neutral parenting really was. I had different ideas than reality. It didn't make sense to me. After reading these studies and listening to parents describe why they are choosing the style of parenting, my mind has been changed. Parents want the best for their children. They believe raising them without gender norms will broaden their horizons from the time they are infants to adults. Children will be more open-minded and have better communication skills. When they have ultimately found themselves, they will know themselves on a deeper level.